course, a lot of this reflects back in his Hillbilly Elegy, his book that he brought out a couple of years ago, which has been in turn been turned into a movie. But it's an interesting choice. He's a freshman senator from Ohio, has very little in terms of political experience. But for Trump, this is really an indication that he is doubling down on the doctrine that the Make America Great again a group that are really calling for. So it's certainly an assertion that this is Trump's Republican Party.
Yes, indeed. I mean, but he's a contrast to Trump, you know, raised in poverty, experience of terrible drug addiction in his family. He sort of made it through, as you say. So he's a contrast, and he talks about the battlers and not forgetting the forgotten people, which is very much Trump's mantra as well, even though Trump really doesn't represent them, does he?
No, and you're absolutely right. He uses Appalachian appeal to the working classes, which for many felt as though they've been left behind by not just by Trump but also by Biden. And he certainly used that, as you mentioned yesterday, the forgotten people. Does this mean that we'll see a more working class focused policies once Trump's in place? Well, that remains to be seen.
Yeah. What about the rest of the world, though, Dafydd? You know, he almost doubles down on Trump's isolationist policies. No support for Ukraine. You won't think that the US would be a very reliable ally if these two are elected to the White House.
No, and it's interesting. Yesterday was supposed to be the focus of foreign policy within the actual convention, and Vance pretty much didn't mention any of that. Previously, he said he didn't care what happened to Ukraine. It's a concern for many of us in Europe, you know, as to what the relationship will be with NATO, what will happen if Trump and Vance do get elected. Again, will that to a certain degree change anything that Trump would have intended to do in the first place? Probably not. This is For Trump, I think this is very much an optic that he can appeal now to the swing voters, the working class voters in those swing states that he needs to be elected, which he's leading already, but he can certainly confirm his position as the leading candidate.
Yeah. You know, throughout this convention, he unusually has been there. They're not often there, the people who are going to be appointed, but he has sat there almost like an anointed king in this crowd. You know, what have you made of his being there, sort of accepting this adulation?
Well, I mentioned somewhere else that this was his coronation, and it certainly does seem to be so. He is surrounded by his court, if one looks to talk about it in that manner. But it's the whole message around Trump is one of strength. He doesn't want to appear to be put off by what has happened over the weekend. There are some people that he have spoken that he seems slightly subdued than normal, but he is still a very strong and powerful figure. Whether that reflects into his speech tonight, we're not quite sure. He said on the weekend that he was going to change his original speech, which he called a humdinger. But we've seen or we've heard from insiders within the Trump camp that the talk is going to be about unity. But I would suggest this is very much a unity that is framed by Trumpism, not one that appeals to entirely American values.
Yeah, you certainly haven't seen anything in the lead-up that suggests unity, really, or you know, or shying away from their attacks on Biden. Of course, this week the focus has been on the RNC, understandably, after last week's events. The chatter, though, has started again in earnest about Biden's ability to win.
Well, it's not been helped by the fact that he's been diagnosed with COVID, which obviously now raises even more questions about his health and his stamina to see out this what is an arduous campaign for young people, never mind for somebody of his age. We've now started to see that maybe the senior leaders of the congressional Democrats, Schumer and Jeffries, are now privately questioning him or advising him. We've seen Nancy Pelosi also give some advice. Maybe the COVID diagnosis is an opportunity for him to, step down with some dignity. The problem is now, of course, who will come in and replace him at such a late hour, and what does the convention then turn into next month when it's in Chicago? Is it a repeat of Chicago 1968 when it was chaos everywhere?
Yeah.
We'll wait and find out.
Yes, and I heard one prominent Republican at the convention saying we can't wait for an open democratic convention. It'll be, we've had similar times ourselves, and they know in a way that this is going to work out for them if Biden does step down, and it may work out too if he doesn't.
Absolutely. One looks back to 2016, Republican convention was completely divided. It was mostly behind Trump in 2020. Now it's completely behind Trump. Trump is very much the leader of his party. Biden, unfortunately, is going to have a lot of questions, about his health if he stays in the race. If he does step down, it will then be about who is going to step in, and we're not certain who will put their hat into the ring or will want to compete against Trump in the current situation.
Yeah. I wonder, for those of us who are watching this kind of situation so closely, are we watching it too intently? Is it possible that with a bit of distance, Biden can stabilise and regain the momentum that he had, where he was sort of neck and neck with Trump? Or do you think at this point it looks like an almost inevitability that Trump will retake the White House?
I think November's still a long way away. And a week is a long time in politics, somebody once famously said. And the problem for Biden, I think, over the last 3 years, he's not been as dominant of the news cycle as the Trump administration was. The benefits that he's brought to American society in terms of the job creation, the raising of international standing, the stock market, they're not really being celebrated as well as they should. We can talk about foreign policy a great deal, but that's not going to win the election. The economy wins the election, and for them, for the Americans, it's about cost of living, inflation, and that's something that Trump can say that he had a better control of than Biden has.
The messaging is really, as you say, very much more dominated by the Republicans. Dafydd, really nice to talk. Thank you.
And you. Thank you very much.